Sitting right in the heart of Savannah, Georgia, is a 19th century house, beautiful and a true testament to its era. Within the museum are hardworking men and women determined to preserve the history of their city and to educate the next generation of maritime explorers. This week is very special, as our Sunday episode focuses on USS Savannah, a courageous World War II warship. Some of our information this week came from the lovely folks at the Ships of the Sea Maritime Museum, and so today, I'd like to tell you a bit about the museum and the tremendous exhibits they have on display. All of this information comes directly from the museum and the museum's website. The Ships of the Sea Maritime Museum was founded in 1966 and houses ship models, maritime antiques, and paintings, primarily from the 18th and 19th centuries during the era of Atlantic trade between England and America. The museum itself is within the historic William Scarbrough house. This Greek Revival architecture-style home was built in 1819 for William Scarbrough, an important shipping merchant and the first president of the Savannah Steamship Company. Scarbrough proudly owned Savannah, the first steamship to cross the Atlantic Ocean. William J., Scarborough's architect from Bath, England, created one of the first examples of domestic Greek Revival architecture which the South is known for. Think of those big, beautiful homes with porches adorned with columns and multi-paned windows. The home was used as a public school from the 1870s up into the 1960s, when the mansion would be abandoned and left for ruin. However, it was rescued by the historic Savannah Foundation in the 1970s, though the house remained empty and unoccupied. After a period of quiet respite for the home, it was restored by the Ships of the Sea Maritime Museum from 1996 into 1997 and given a new roof based upon a William J. design, as well as making the gardens larger. I would confidently say most of us have no idea who William Scarbrough is, or his significance to history, so let's go over that. He was a shipping merchant born in North Carolina on February 18, 1776, and graduated from the University of Edinburgh. He arrived in Savannah, Georgia in 1802 at the young age of 26. Very quickly, he became well-respected and affluent, becoming manager of elections, a bank director, consul general of Russia, vestryman of Christ Church, member of the Board of Health, and vice consul of Denmark and Sweden. So, to say he was a key member of society in this day and age would be the understatement of the century. He was at the peak of his wealth and prominence in 1818 when he'd become president of the Savannah Steamship Company. This company launched SS Savannah, which, as I mentioned earlier, would be the first steamship across the Atlantic Ocean. SS Savannah, in all honesty, was not a commercial success despite the pomp and circumstance. This is due to the fact that the public had much anxiety over embracing her revolutionary steam power. She was launched on August 22, 1818, and she was launched during the Age of Sail, so many steamships had their steam engines as well as sails, and she was no exception, being fully rigged as a sailing vessel as well as a sidewheel steamer. After this voyage, she was a financial disaster for her owners, so she was converted back to a sailing ship shortly after returning home from Europe. In 1823, SS Savannah would sink off Fire Island, New York. No other American-owned steamship company would cross the Atlantic for almost 30 years. Back to Mr. Scarbrough. In November of 1820, William Scarbrough was 44 years old when he was declared an insolvent debtor by the court, losing everything. In the midst of an emotional and physical breakdown, Scarborough's home and furnishings were sold, though luckily to a family member who let William and his family stay in the home. In the late 1820s and early 1830s, he worked as an agent for the Upper Darien Steam Rice and Sawmill in Darien, Georgia, returning to Savannah in 1835. He would die just 3 years later on June 11, 1838, at the age of 62. He was interred at a vault in Savannah's Colonial Park Cemetery with his wife, who lived for 13 years after his passing. After his passing, his home was purchased in 1878 and given to the Board of Education, where it became a public schoolhouse, known as the West Broad Street School, one of the first city-funded black-only schools, operating until 1962. The historic Savannah Foundation began work restoring the house in 1972, with the house being recognized as a National Historic Landmark in 1974. The Ships of the Sea Maritime Museum acquired the house in 1995, embarking on another restoration. They would add a new roof based upon a documented design by architect William J., as well as a new rear portico and larger garden, completing this restoration in 1997. The museum is rich with history. And we'll get into their collection next. If you are enjoying this episode and want to hear more about ships, their careers, and their wrecks, check out our main show, Shipwreck Sunday, every Sunday night at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Alright, my friends, let's get into the museum's collection. The Ships of the Sea Maritime Museum hosts a plethora of model ships, maritime paintings, and artifacts, the majority of the ship models being commissioned by the museum itself to tell the story of Savannah's vast maritime history. This collection features many of our favorite types, including ironclads, colonial ships, modern Navy vessels, ocean-going steamers, and even a beautiful model of RMS Titanic. All of the models are built at the same scale, so it is easy to compare their sizes. Let's look at a few of the models they have on display. First, of course, is SS Savannah, and the most well-known ship in their collection is RMS Titanic. But these two aren't the only beauties on display here. The Anne is a sailing ship that sailed to America in the fall of 1732, carrying the first 114 colonists, roughly 40 families, to the new colony of Georgia. She traveled from the mouth of the Thames to Charleston, South Carolina on a 2-month-long journey, arriving on January 18, 1733. Just 6 days later, Anne sailed along the coast and arrived at Beaufort, where the colonists could disembark to rest. A few days after this, small boats carrying the colonists left for what would become Savannah, traveling up the Savannah River and arriving at the site on February 12, 1733. A beautiful day to land in Savannah, I'd say, though I'm biased since that's my birthday. Another model in their collection is the Wanderer, a ship with a dark past. The importation of slaves into America was outlawed in 1808, but still from time to time, ships would attempt to smuggle slaves into the country illegally. One of these ships was unfortunately the Wanderer, a beautiful yacht built in 1857 for pleasure for a New York sportsman. She was not only gorgeous, but incredibly fast for a sailing ship capable of reaching 20 knots. However, she might have been built with the illegal slave trade in mind, as she was swiftly purchased by Southerners and refitted to having a cargo carrying capacity. She sadly landed a cargo of 400 slaves on Jekyll Island in Georgia in 1858. She was lost off Cuba in 1871. And finally, for highlights, SS City of Savannah. If you're familiar with steamships of the 1870s, she looks a lot more akin to that than SS Savannah. If you're not, let's go over that. She was a steamship looking a lot more like typical ocean liners of the era, equipped with steam engines as well as masts equipped with rigging. This was because passengers were nervous to trust in just steam power alone, and the presence of sails guaranteed the ship could still move if the engines failed or ran out of fuel. These ships were also typically in a 1:10 ratio when it comes to width by length, and they sit lower in the water than later ocean liners like Titanic. SS City of Savannah was built in 1877 and provided passenger and freight services between Savannah, New York City, and Boston. Sadly, in August of 1893, she sank off the coast of South Carolina during the Great Sea Islands Hurricane, which is the 4th deadliest storm in U.S. history. I've covered a few storms, so let me know if that's something you'd like to see. Now, let's show the museum some love. If you'd like to visit the museum, it is open 7 days a week from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and is located at 41 Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Savannah, Georgia, and the zip code there is 31401. To contact the museum, you can call them at 912-232-1511, and if you're calling internationally, you'll need to use the country code 1 prior to the rest of the phone number. You can also email them at info@shipsofthesea.org. They offer group tours and memberships if you're local, as well as venue rental. If you'd like to support them, and I'd love it if you did, you can visit their website in the description of this episode to donate. On their website is also a myriad of online exhibits, so definitely check it out. Thank you to the lovely folks at the Ships of the Sea Museum for your integral role in preserving maritime history, as it is so often forgotten in schools and plays a huge role in human history. Thank you as well for providing so much research and information for this week's episodes. We appreciate you over here.